enable the transcription. So awesome. All right, well, welcome everyone. I'm so glad to see folks here. My name's Zach Sadiq. I am the Disability Systems Navigation Coordinator here at the Arc of King County. I'm a autistic social worker, a community organizer, an activist and advocate, and I'm always really passionate about amplifying the voices of folks who are encountering marginalization or oppression in whatever way that looks like. And over the past couple of weeks, well, months actually, we've been getting a lot of reports of parents with disabilities who have not been served very well by the various social services systems out there, from CPS to the Developmental Disabilities Administration to many other organizations as well. And so we thought it would be important to really center and highlight the voices of folks with parents with disabilities and just hear what their experiences are like and see what we can do to create systems change. So I just wanted to really thank the amazing panelists and parents we have here today. Thank you all so much for being willing to share your stories, your lives, your personal experiences, and your emotional labor with us. It's very appreciated. And I guess with all of that, oh, I should give a visual description. I almost forgot about that. So I am a 31-year-old white dude with short black hair, wearing a pair of gamer headphones, wearing a black shirt, and with a bit of a long beard and mustache. Cool. So with all of that said, I guess I will start with the first question for the panelists, which I'm going to copy in chat. And the question is, introduce yourself, name, pronoun, disability, visual description, or anything else you think is important. How has disability personally impacted your life? Are you the only one in your family with a disability? And so Lahila is going to go first. So hi, Lahila. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name, well, is Lahela. You can call me Ella if it's easier. My pronoun is she or they, but I won't be offended if you refer to me in another manner. I am freshly diagnosed autistic, and I am, if you were in a crowd, I would not necessarily stand out. I'm a female, long hair, light brown, and I'm 46 years old. And yeah, there's nothing about me that stands out in any way. So sort of that gives you a sense, I hope. How has this disability personally impacted my life? Well, that's a really hard question, again, because I'm freshly diagnosed. And I, up until this point, never really thought of myself as disabled. I'm still wrapping my head around that and dealing with internalized ableism. But if I stop and think, it probably has contributed to some mental health issues for me: anxiety, depression, fatigue, withdrawal, and questions of not being adequate or good enough, self-confidence because of these differences that I didn't have a name for. I thought I always perceived the difference. I just didn't know that it was something. Yeah, so my fresh diagnosis would be I'm high masking, meaning most people haven't suspected that I am unless they are neurodivergent themselves. Then they've called me out and can recognize that in me. And am I the only one in my family? My son is autistic, and it's thanks to him that I started learning about what it means to be autistic and connecting with other parents and women, especially in the autistic community. Women are often diagnosed later than boys, and it looks, so to speak, differently only because it's probably more internal than outwardly manifested autism. And how has it impacted my life? I think I already mentioned sort of mental health issues, and now it's impacting me in slightly different ways, but I feel the questions that come after might better respond to that. So I'll hold off. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Lahela. And sorry for mispronouncing your name earlier. Awesome. All right. So next we have Carrie. Hello, Carrie.
Hi, this is Carrie. Thanks for having me today. My name is Carrie Bassos. I use she or they pronouns. I am a white woman in my mid 40s with a blonde French bob and a bright pink sweater, sitting in front of a vibrant felt board with a poster of disability rights activist Anita Cameron behind me. I have multiple disabilities. I was first put in a separate school for disabled kids because of my physical disabilities when I was born. I then experienced post-traumatic stress because of my interactions with the medical system. I have anxiety. I was late diagnosed probably about 10 years ago with ADHD. I have an autoimmune condition. I have a whole list. I keep picking up disabilities. I think I'm fine. I'm good at what I have, and it keeps it lively. How has disability impacted my life? In all the ways. So everything from my relationship to my own parents, to the work that I do, my experiences during COVID. And then I can talk more about, I intentionally chose to be the parent of a disabled kid through adoption because I wanted them to have a different experience than I had growing up. And do I have other people in my family besides that with disabilities? I'm the daughter of a disabled Vietnam veteran, so I'm not sure if he would identify in that way, but I would certainly say there are other folks in my family growing up, but not with a strong sense of disability identity.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And yeah, your answer definitely made me reflect on a couple of things about like, what even is disability? How do we decide when a disability is a disability, and how does that impact our personal experiences? And I'm sure that's something we'll be talking about, later down the road. So looking forward to hearing what everyone is going to say on that. Cool. All right. So Maria, you're up next. How's it going?
I'm doing okay. I took on the name Miriam when I became Muslim. So even though like the name on my birth certificate is Maria, and that was the name given to me by my parents, I chose the name Miriam when I became Muslim. So I am a brown woman. I'm over 50, my friends. Um, and I'm a brown woman wearing a head covering, a religious head covering. It's black. In a room that's somewhat brightly lit with a painting with green color of a scene from nature in the foreground. And I use she, her pronouns. I think like my experience living with a disability is has like some similar characteristics as those of like the folks who spoke before. I think it's impacted my professional life, my personal life, intimate relationships, definitely my relationship with my children. And I think because I didn't have like a name for what I was experiencing or understanding of what it showed up like, that I spent a lot of time just not being present and not having a support system that could help me to like build and develop tools like coping skills. I think like I was just like checked out and not present, like not present for myself, and not being able to like be really emotionally or psychologically present for my children for a long time. Just doing like the best that I could, but not being able to really like be present and um, like just be able to use exercises or be centered enough to really think about my children like for the long term, so I was just like doing everything like in the moment. So things like planning for college for my kids, or like higher education were impacted like by having a disability, or even like goal setting for myself. So those are like a few of the things that I think I've noticed about this beautiful ride. And I'm sure we'll talk more later.
Totally, yeah. And we had a really good conversation. I think it was yesterday, right? Just talking about like how, you know, things like intergenerational trauma really just plays a role on all of that. And that really stuck with me today. So yeah, I think it's definitely a subject a lot of y'all are going to be talking about, and I think it'll be enlightening for folks. So thank you for being here. All right, last but not least, we have Santa. Hello, Santa. How's it going?
My name is Santa Perez. I am a Hispanic woman with brown hair, tied back in a ponytail. I'm wearing purple glasses and I'm in my office with a white bookcase behind me. Excuse the beeps. I use 2 switches to use Morse code to access my computer.
Santa, looks like you copied your answer in chat. Do you want me to read that? Okay. So Santa said, I've had cerebral palsy all my life. When my son was an infant, I couldn't do a lot of manual work. My partner and others did. As Noah got older, it was easier to tell him how to do something than to show him how to do something. We had to become very creative in adapting to get the work done, like poking a pen to open a juice box open. Just because I couldn't physically participate, I could still be with him, talking to him. Yeah, and that's something a lot of like non-disabled folks don't realize. It is that creativity you have to really have when, you know, you have a, you know, physical disability or even like other non-physical disabilities as well. And that's not really something that can be taught unless the parent themselves has a disability as well. So yeah. Santa, did you have anything else you wanted to say there? Nope. Cool. All right. Well, thank you all so much for your introductions. It's making me eager to jump to the next question. So the next question is, what has your experience as a parent been like? How has disability impacted your experience as a parent? Have you always had your disability or was it acquired? And so looks like Lahela, you'll be first.
Hi, and I also just wanted to say it was the first time I've ever had to do a physical description in a Zoom meeting, and I think I learned, I should have come after, I learned from all of you how to do it, but I also think that's telling as we're speaking about, you know, how can providers help parents with disabilities. So thank you all for educating me, and yeah, moving forward, I'll know what to do and how to do it better. So what's my experience as a parent been like? Well, in general terms, it's been the most fulfilling and the hardest thing I've ever done in general terms. And how has my autism, being autistic, affected my parenting? Well, there's a lot of things, but I would say self-regulation. That's probably the biggest thing I've had to wrap my brain around, realizing and coming to terms with my anxiety and seeing how it affects my autistic child, but also my other child, neurotypical. I think it goes down to what we can think of as relational sort of neurology and how kids and how parents contribute to the neurological and development of their kids and their psychological well-being. And so that's opened a can of worms, a good one. But again, my anxiety, my ability to be easily fatigued because environments are more draining, the anxiety that goes with transitions and preparing for outings. I used to remark and admire other parents who could just get up and go and do all these things. And I felt like, oh my gosh, I can't, it feels like so much. And so I had internalized that as a failure of mine, or my, lack of commitment as a parent, which is far from the truth. But so I would say it's contributed to my self-judgment, but also my ability to provide and deliver more fun activities to my kids compared to other parents. But that being said, when you have a kiddo with autism, you have to take into consideration where you go and what you do. So I think it becomes sort of this reverberation, this amplification that happens, and it becomes difficult to then figure out, where do I end and where does he begin, and how do I navigate this? And I don't have an answer. It's just there's the sum of the two parts is much bigger. So that is something to keep in mind. My autism and my child's autism together. Right. Thank you, Zach, for not hiding your head. And yeah, so generalized anxiety that goes with it. Does the anxiety come first, or is a product? I don't know. I said about self-regulation, and then the anxiety often leads to depression because I feel like things are too hard or too much, or then I internalize and feel like it's a failure and that I'm not good enough. And so working on all these feelings and thoughts while wanting to be fully present, as Miriam said, to your child, because that's what they need: attunement, they need empathy, they need co-creation of dialogue and narrative to make autobiographical meaning of their lives. And so as a parent, you need to be grounded and you need to be calm. And so I think I'm very vigilant and I'm very aware. So I do think I succeed and I'm in a good parent in a lot of ways. But if we use the spoon theory, I use a lot of spoons for this. And then what's left? Okay, I work part-time, I'm going to school, but social interactions are the thing to go. And there's other things to go, like exercise, which shouldn't. So self-care is something that is fundamental, especially if you go into a mental, I want to get my counseling degree, but it's also, as a parent, self-care is essential. So it's just managing all the things. I hope that was coherent. I think that's my answer. Let me know if you have any questions.
That was very coherent. And when you were talking about spoons, could you maybe explain to folks who aren't aware of the spoon theory of disabilities, like what it is?
Sure. Although Zach, you can jump in if you want. Well, it's the idea, you open your drawer, your cutlery drawer, and you have a set number of spoons to use throughout the day. And you use one for getting your kid ready for school. And you use one to respond to all your emails. And you use the other one to resolve a little exchange with a friend that's not quite an argument. And then before it's 3 o'clock and you don't have any spoons left, what do you do?
That's a really good sort of like descriptor of just like the energy we have to budget. And that's not necessarily something that like non-disabled people have to consider just like day by day. Things are so much easier and so much more accessible for them, from what I can tell. And yeah, that really impacts, I think, how easy it is for us to like access services, how easy it is for us to, do the things we want to in life, whether it be like going to school, socializing if we're into that. And so, yeah, thank you so much for, sharing a little about your life there and your explanation of the spoon theory. It was really enlightening. All right, so Carrie, what are you thinking?
I'd like to just build on that. I think being a parent is good and also exhausting. You can be out of all those spoons and the kid's bus could have not even shown up. I mean, that just and then you've got the rest of the day. I think that other parents have been really exhausting in this process, and I can talk more about that, but I don't relate to non-disabled parents so often, which is an irony in my work. We won't go into that. But I have just experienced so much stigma as a disabled parent and had conversations that were really inappropriate with other parents about how they wish they didn't have disabled kids. And so I find other people exhausting in being a parent. And I've had to be really selective about where I'm addressing that social attention and that you were talking about, which is so precious. And along the way, I picked up new disabilities and diagnoses, and I wanted to be a parent through adoption. I think my daughter has a lot of similar disabilities to me. I think one of the painful parts, and my husband is a person of color, and so one of the painful parts is that people on the outside always assume that I'm biologically related to my child, and she has her own identity, right? And then where does my husband fit in this mix? So even in just interacting with other parents or teachers, there's this idea that this can't possibly be a family. And then you add in the fact there's so much of that internalized, attitudes about gender and parenting roles and being a good enough parent or not. Like, are you baking all the cookies for school? Are you buying the cookies? You're saying screw it with cookies because I can't even think about this. I don't, and you're kind of out. Like I've experienced a lot of people throughout her lifetime that assume that I'm incompetent as a parent. And, I shouldn't have to justify that, or other people intervening when they see us out in public. There are just so many examples. And I love being her parent, and I've been able to introduce her to disability community, and it's been amazing. And she has a different idea of what families are like, and all these things that can be quite healing. But then, we're like multiply stigmatized when we're out and about, and it doesn't quite fit with other people's ideas of what it means to be a parent or a family. So I find that part really exhausting. But if I'm just hanging with my family and chosen friends and chosen family, I am good. And I find it really fulfilling and supportive. Just don't send me out in public a lot of times, right? I'm sure many of you can relate to that, but that's where I am, good and exhausting.
Thank you. I can definitely relate to that as well. Even though I'm not a parent, just like the outside non-disabled people being super exhausting. If I could ask a follow-up question, like what was the adoption process like? Do you feel that, having a disability was counted against you in that process? And, do you think it would have been like counted against you even more if you were trying to adopt like a non-disabled child versus adopting a, kid with a disability? Like what did that look like?
So we thought we would adopt domestically, and there's a much longer story, but a disabled college student introduced me to the little girl who became my child, who was in Ukraine. So we went to Ukraine, and Ukraine doesn't adopt disabled parents, and their definition of disability is quite broad. It included, my middle-aged partner's blood pressure medication. So we went not knowing if we would be able to adopt, and living in Ukraine for 2 months and really just experiencing a lot of those attitudes and going to institutions where kids were warehoused, having people shove money in our hands on the street. And, I think that the reason I was able to adopt was because I was adopting a disabled child. And also at the time I was a professor and a lawyer, and people found that kind of shiny, and they could look away from the disability and not notice it, right? And so I think I got a bit of a social and legal waiver in that way. And yeah, I wonder what the process would have been like here. It's just, we got to a position where we were kind of one and done with being parents, and quite happy with that, but just wasn't the route we were planning. So it was its own thing. And I have heard from friends here in the US that, of course, there have been a lot of questions about their competency as well to be parents and adopt.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I almost feel like we could do another webinar just on that one topic itself. So maybe down the road. Awesome. So Miriam, I'm eager to hear your answer to the question.
Oh, so what was my experience? What has my experience as a parent been like? And then how has my disability impacted my experience? And then have I always had a disability or was it acquired? So my experience as a parent has been just like the most phenomenal educational experience that I've ever had. It's been like going to college like 3 times. And I'm like still learning every day, it's been like a journey of like self-exploration for me, I think being like around my kids and like hearing about them and wanting to have like a great relationship with them and like valuing my relationship with them. It's making like it pushes me to like grow. And like my kids, they don't have like filters a lot of times, which I heard that kind of goes around. But like, I it's not always like pleasant, So like one of my children tells me like, we'll get into like a discussion like where we're like arguing with each other. And like I mean, he'll actually tell me I'm crazy, you know what I mean? Like, so that may seem like horrifying, sometimes like I don't want to hear that, but when my, like that's his experience, so I want to like understand or like, understand like what he's thinking or like why is he saying that, like it makes me like have to consider like my own behaviors, like what am I doing, like I don't just like brush off like what they're saying, as just like, well, they're teenagers. I mean, I do like to brush it off, but I can't always. Like it impacts me. I feel like having a disability like has is an experience that's helped me to like, you know, that I've become a more sensitive person. I like grew up with a father who was an alcoholic, which is like that intergenerational piece. And I think like growing up like in families where there's addiction or growing up in my family, like from what I'm learning like about addiction is like you become like really observant of the environment. You're like paying attention to like the cues, like, because people with addiction like are not always like their behaviors aren't always predictable and their behaviors can be like harmful. So sometimes it's like, just I think like growing up in addiction, like in a family with addiction made me more like sensitive, like so I am like very sensitive, like I don't have like a callous layer where like when my children say something to me I just like brush it off. So like, just um parenting has made me like have to like take a deep look at myself, and ask myself like how I'm showing up, or like is it me, like I'd have to reflect, and just say like and be accountable, which I still don't like to be accountable with the kids. I'm still like tripping on like I'm the adult, like there's a hierarchy, like um so like I think that's what like being a parent has been like. It's just been like such an incredibly, like it's an incredible educational journey. And I've had to self-reflect. I'm not saying like we should, children shouldn't have to like bear the burden of our growth, necessarily our emotional growth, and I think that's where like having a disability like shows up, is that all the mistakes that I'm making, like as I'm learning about myself as a person with a disability, like, and with like a mental health disability, like depression, where like I'm just, like I can't even tell you if like tomorrow I'm going to be like not wanting to lay in a bed all day. You know what I mean? So like today I could have like all these hopes and dreams, like I'm sending my son, like my son's gonna go to college, like we're gonna plug in, I'm gonna strategize to like, make higher education, or we're gonna be doing financial literacy, like having all these ideas about like how do we like move out of like our struggles, of like our position in society, being brown, like all the intergenerational stuff. Like I could have these grand ideas, but tomorrow I could be like so tired that the only thing I could do is like, be like, hey, how are you doing today, son? Or just be like faking like I'm okay that day, like feeling like I need to like fake, or not necessarily like totally fake, but just like present myself to my children as if I'm not feeling like inside totally like crap. You know what I mean? Like showing up enough to like be like I don't want to send you out of the door like having interacted with like a parent who is like full of depressive symptoms, or like irritable because I'm depressed, or not being able to say like something positive to you as you go out the door, like. So I think that was like those three questions all together. Like I think like I developed a disability from growing up in an environment where there was like addiction and like unresolved, like, or unattended to mental health issues that might be like a product of addiction, or it's all together, because like I think people also like can use like substances to cope with like when your symptoms like show up and they're very painful, and like the feelings are just like so overwhelming, so it's like these cross influences, but anyway, that's it, I think.
Yeah, well, thank you for all of that. Just, I had never really thought before about like how intergenerational trauma can, cause disability or disabling situations, and how it can sometimes perpetuate itself onto the next generations, and how that, impacts our lives and the lives of our, friends and family members and community members. And so I think that is such an important point, especially considering that historically, like society thinks of disability either as, you either are or aren't disabled. Your disability is always the same thing at the same level. It doesn't change, and it doesn't necessarily like consider, the differing energy levels or differing like moods you might have every day, and how that impacts what you're able to do. And oh yeah, you've put so many thoughts into my brain, and I appreciate that. So thank you. All right. Well, last but not least, we have Santa. Hello, Santa. Santa, do you want me to read what you typed in chat? Okay, so Santa wrote, I think I answer that question. It was important for me to be a mom. It's a part of my heritage. I couldn't let disability get in my way. It was the best thing that ever happened. Awesome. Do you have anything else you want to say on there? Okay. Oh, okay. Looks like you're typing, so I'm assuming so. Santa wrote, for my son, I am mom. There's no, I'm assuming, disabilities. And that, yeah, that is so important, because I mean, in so many ways, disability is like, created by society, created by perceptions. And yeah, what's a child to think of that? Would a child automatically, would Santa's kid automatically look at her and think, oh, she has a disability? Or would that only happen like after, they go to kindergarten and realize that, some of the other parents might be different? Oh, yeah, that's important. Santa, was there anything else you wanted to say? Nope, you're good. Okay, thank you, Santa. All right. Oh, and I should say to the audience members, sorry for not saying this before, but if any of you have any questions you want asked to the panelists, please type them in chat and we will get to them either at the end of the panel or as we're going through the panel if it's really connected. So awesome. All right. So the next question we've got is, and let me put myself on spotlight really quick. So the next question we've got is, do you feel like your needs as a parent with a disability have been met? In what ways have they been met or not been met? And like, what's the impact been on your family? So first to go, we've got Lahela. Hello.
Hey, so again, I'm freshly diagnosed as autistic. I previously never thought of myself as disabled. I don't know that I still do. That's a whole nother conversation. But when you say have your needs been met, that means that's an externalizing aspect, right? There's someone on the outside who has come and met my need, right? Yeah. And the answer then is no, in terms of spontaneously on the outside, someone coming and going, oh, you have a need, let me help you. I have advocated, I have out of curiosity, because of my personality, because of my going down rabbit holes and my monotropism and my research, and thanks to my child also, I have to, I've acquired that, I've advocated that, I've gone to therapy, I've met neurodivergent friends, I've asked questions there. So yes, in my my community of choice, in that way, I've had my needs met. Other than that, it's been trial and error in my life, picking, the friends or the places I succeed at or work, stubbing my toes along the way, figuring out, okay, this is how I work, this is what I need. Receiving the diagnosis recently has made that legitimate and okay for me. So, so my answer would be, in general, no, except within my community of choice, which is the disabled community or the neurodivergent community. And then my loved ones and close friends, I'm fortunate that way. They've been very supportive. Or they just don't know. They're like, oh, it's just you. And so the word disability doesn't mean anything. So then I have to educate a little bit. So it's, yeah, but I'd like to speak, I'll wait because I feel like I address more about needs and what might be useful or interesting for providers. So I'll wait for that. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, you pretty much did. Like when I wrote that question down, I didn't have any specific place where I wanted folks to go with it. I was thinking maybe, oh, well, if you're, a parent with a physical disability and you need like help, like getting diapers for your kid because the supermarkets are inaccessible, or, you can't get money to, buy those groceries, or, you're having troubles like going to your job because of the lack of transportation, for example. Like I was thinking of those things and like anything else folks were would think with that question. So it sounds like you gave a pretty great answer. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that.
I do. I would like to reframe it that I come, from a position of privilege. I'm white. My partner has a job that can sustain our family in such a way that I can work part-time. And so I have privilege, and therefore I might not have to be in a more vulnerable position where I have to go to receive services. But that being said, there's also the factor of an invisible disability. So
Yeah, and that is
complicates. So there's an intersectionality there, but I do come from a position of privilege and I'm totally aware of that. And so I'd like to let the others speak now because I've I can only speak to that little
sure.
cluster of things.
Awesome. Well, I definitely appreciate your answer, in so many ways. So thank you for sharing all that. All right. Let's see. Next, we have Carrie.
Yeah, I would share many of those sentiments in terms of having privilege in this mix and also feeling like, chosen family and friends have been good about stepping up and meeting needs. I would say that's been most pronounced during acute crises. So I had surgery and folks brought me food. Now I don't know that they would, if I needed food every day. So it was this idea that they really stepped up, and I have a great community of people that do family and education advocacy, and so they get that. So I really appreciated that, and it's certainly not a kindness that I've had throughout my life, but it really made me think, how am I stepping up for others? The other piece is I really struggled, for example, in getting childcare. I believe that I experienced discrimination as a disabled parent with a disabled kid. I had to file a civil rights complaint for my child to get access to childcare so that I could actually have the job that I have now, which brings better health insurance. It's just been a lot to juggle energy wise. And, one of my friends, I don't use a wheelchair all the time. I mostly use a cane. And one of my friends who uses a wheelchair was saying it's like being in a video game and navigating obstacles. So I just think you just don't know what you're going to run into, whether it's the attitudinal access, the actual access when you show up for school, things like parking. The same, comes up at work, but it's just a second job of trying to figure out access issues for myself, for my kid. And of course, there are various impacts on like my partner too, and what kind of physical labor or other pieces he might need to pick up. And then what, the crip chicks, and I call myself a crip or cripple, like what the crip chicks in his life are processing in the moment. So, and being outside of that community. So it's a lot. Go back to being pretty exhausting, but I'm really grateful for the ride or die friends and colleagues that I have, because they've made it more doable.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, both your answer and Hella's answer is really making me think of the social model of disabilities, because in addition to the inaccessible physical environments that might exist, sometimes the disabilities can be ameliorated through support through friends or family members or the community around you. And that's been, I think, in a way, a recurring theme for what all of you have been saying. So I definitely appreciate that piece of reflection there. So next we have Miriam. Hello.
Well, first I want to I appreciate everyone and really appreciate Santa. I'm getting so much power from you, in the way you're holding space. I appreciate that. And you're making me think about language, and how language, man, language itself is can shape our experiences in a not so positive way, because it otherizes folks, you know what I mean, as opposed to I'm showing up as whoever I am, and that's good enough, I am just this particular parent, I look like this, I sound like this, and I think like this, and that's the nuance of life, so as far as the needs being met as a parent, I've been a single parent for a long time. So when I think about needs being met and external systems, and what are the systems that I interact with as a parent where I would need some needs to get met. So I would think of schools, the ones that I've interacted with, schools, the criminal justice system, and healthcare. So for instance, schools, I think that, well, first, I think that we haven't set our society up to prepare itself to greet folks with nuance. You know, like I think like things are set up where everything like looks this one particular way, you know, or it's like black or white, like there's nothing like in between. So like when we like deal with institutions, like it's not even set up, like folks don't really they haven't been trained or like educated in how to like interact with people that may not look like them or not have the same cultural background. And that there's just like this set of rules that's prevailing that people cannot like seem to like connect like the human being with a need like beyond the rule or something that exists, you know, like so when I think about like schools, I think like like I'm sorry, I'm going more to like beyond this question a little bit, but like
Oh, go there, go there.
if my kid's school had, for instance, like a person who was just like a person there, like for parents with disabilities, you know, like for me, like my I am not always going to process like some long like piece of paper or, you know, even like if my son's absent, I have to go online. They make it really easy now because there's like an app. You go through it, you click like the day like that your child's going to be absent, you know. But this is like new. I personally like it. It's helpful. I don't have to interact with anyone and call and be like, why is your son absent today or anything like that, you know. But like if there was a person there that like their job was just to like reach out to myself and my son and like, you know, support me and staying connected and like giving me ideas about like parenting or how to support my son academically or reaching out to my son and seeing like what kind of supports he was needing, like where there was a gap kind of, you know, like I feel like it would be cool like to be showing up to like PTA meetings. Like I feel like that's something that I might be able to do and like that would be helpful to my son. But wow, PTA meeting gets like really caught up in this like whole huge like set of thoughts that I'm like dealing with that are coming all the time. So like, you know, again, like consistency is hard for me, like processing like paperwork or emails and like just continuing like a consistency of connection with something is challenging. So if there was like some folks along the way in these institutions that were like prepared, you know, like, and they maybe offered some like alternatives of how to stay connected with a teacher or, you know, like, hey, maybe there's like a group chat that I could have with teachers like every day. I mean, I'm sure these things are out there, but man, I feel very overwhelmed a lot of the time, you know, just making it through the day, like mentally and physically is like sort of intense. So like, you know, as far as like just those needs, again, back to like the needs being met, like more support from institutions, having like designated individuals within those institutions that are like well educated, you know, like who like are so immersed in community maybe that when they're dealing with folks with quote unquote like disabilities, it's not a bunch of like stigmas and like weird things. It's really about like, hey, what's going on and how could I meet your needs, you know, like how can we, you know, how can we support you? Like just some little extra support to help us like be more successful, you know, and especially like help my children or our children to like be more successful, you know, that would be like, yeah, I just think like somehow like institutions need to show up like in a different way, you know, like not punitive, you know, but to think of individuals as part of families. So when things are happening, like institutions like like I could be met like as a family as opposed to like they're just talking to me, the mom, or talking to my son or my daughter, but that they're talking to like families. Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
jump in?
Please,
if
yeah,
Miriam
please
can?
jump in.
Miriam, may I jump in?
Yeah.
You inspire, there's something that you said that I wrote down because I didn't want to forget, and that is whether it's school, I was thinking more in terms of going to the doctor, the geneticist, or different providers. When I'm going for my child, I wrote, treat a parent as a co-provider of treatment and not just a ride or payment. Empower the parent and the family. A parent is not just a hurdle to overcome to get to the child. What sensory, emotional, or physical challenges does the parent have when trying to access care for their child? And to me, that's exactly it. I feel like as parents, sometimes there's not this holistic view. There's not, and also the power and possibility that comes when you provide the parent with the support to then actualize certain changes that have to happen at home, whether they be dietary or behavioral or whatever. And then not to be so compartmentalized. I think our society has this way of compartmentalizing things and, child, parent, but, everything that you said, Miriam, really just, yes. All right, I'll calm down now. But it
no need
really
to calm
was
down.
connected. And
yeah, totally is. And that, just the idea that like, we exist in systems is, I think, such an important point that really, like family systems, like societal systems, really seems like something that's not necessarily considered by like the schools or like medical providers. And I want to jump into that, but before we do, I also want to read Santa's answer. So Santa wrote in chat earlier, there are many people with disabilities that have children. I wish I would have known them to get support and advice. There is one organization that supports parents through the Looking Glass. As for my family, they were not happy at first that I had gotten pregnant. I believe they thought they would have to raise the baby, but that wasn't the case at all. If you're planning to start a family, let's see. Sorry, the chat jumped. If you're planning to start a family, it takes a lot of planning ahead of time, finding the right supports. It's very important that you take charge. And I'm going to jump in there. Like, yeah, self-determination is super important, especially for parents with IDDD. And that is almost never considered. Guardianship always happens, and it always removes that self-determination. So yeah, I'm with you there. Yeah, Santa, did you have anything else you wanted to say on that? Okay, Santa wrote you need to advocacy at the bottom, but that looks like everything. Cool. Okay. Yeah, wow. So I'm I'm just kind of lost in everything y'all are saying, and I appreciate everything. So the next question we have is looking a little more towards folks' experiences, advocating for their own children and how that's been like. The question is, how has having a disability impacted you and your children when you have had to advocate for their needs? This could be for IEPs, medical services, or really like anything else that comes to mind. And, if y'all want to take it further and, think about times where you've also had to advocate for yourself in those systems, either to advocate for your own kid or just for your own needs, like also feel free to throw that in. So first we have Lahela. Hello.
hey, okay. So yes, my being autistic has, I think, impacted me when I've had to advocate for my kiddos' needs. I think what's challenging is in a lot of communities, I haven't even outed myself. And since I just recently discovered, so a lot of it was internal. And for those of you, what really resonates for me as being autistic, and I'm providing this information, is I get very hyper-focused on information or an idea. I really have to understand, really have to understand. And I want to ask all the questions, and I want to dialogue, and I want to dive in, and it really matters. It really matters. It's not just, it's not this consumeristic thing. It matters for my identity. It matters for the way I feel and experience the world. It matters for how I love my people. My kid.
Can I jump in really quick? Yeah. Just knowing how the school systems are, I would imagine you're absolutely a hit at the IEP meetings with that mindset.
um, I've been yes, and but they've gone well so far. It's a whole nother can of worms, but just to say, for instance, when I didn't know I was autistic, and now it's all making sense to me now, I was called. I basically endured a feeling of being judged without support being offered, and I didn't know what was wrong. So, for instance, I've been called fastidious in the discussion of the management of my child's care. So fastidious sometimes can be positive, but it usually is not a positive connotation. My people have commented on my extreme level of anxiety. It's been pointed out to me in those circumstances as if it were a bad thing, as if it were a poor reflection of me and my parenting or my competency as an adult, my competence as an adult. And I've been felt judged or a little felt the condescension when I've been unable to deliver, or I've missed an appointment accident. I'm actually pretty good, but this is executive functioning, the ability to plan, organize, or transition quickly. I'm high achieving. I've been able to do it, but I'm not the best with emails. I have to work really hard for things that other people are better, more efficient. So yes, it's affected me in a more emotional, personal, internalized way. You know, my feelings, which might not seem that important, but to me they are. That being said, I'm tenacious, and I have been able to advocate for my child and get what I want. Again, privilege. I'm educated. I also can play, look the part. I can throw out the right words, like the least restrictive learning environment when I have to, or out of compliance. So again, I have a cushion that maybe other people don't have, but it is hurtful, and it really becomes an internalized feeling of being incompetent or lesser than, or something's really wrong with me as a person, as a parent, as an adult.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely really appreciate that answer. And, it makes me reflect on just like how shame impacts this entire conversation, where there's a shame that might exist because you're not able to do things in a certain way or in a certain amount of time, when it's just like, the systems themselves can create that lack of support or that lack of understanding. And yeah, that's something that I feel like has just been pervading all of your answers throughout this conversation. So I appreciate that. So next we have Carrie. Carrie, do you want to add anything?
Sure. So the shame piece you were just talking about really connects to my experiences of advocating for myself and also for my daughter in healthcare. I just think, I didn't come from parents that push back against doctors. So I probably had some unnecessary surgeries and treatments that actually, ended up causing the need for more surgeries and treatments as an adult. When I push back against doctors and ask what happens if we don't do this, or is this thing, for example, for my daughter's physical disabilities, is this thing cosmetic or functional? I've certainly been treated as if I am a parent who doesn't consider the welfare of their child, or how dare I ask this, or that I'm over-identifying with my child's disability and therefore can't see straight. On the flip side of that, when doctors know that I am a frequent flyer in healthcare and I had 40-something surgeries, they will just get down to it, like I'm writing articles for JAMA, the journal of whatever, for medical, and I don't even know what JAMA is, but they'll start using the medical words. I'm like, could you bring it down to the level of an interaction with a parent where you are providing bedside manner and you are explaining what this thing is, but you're willing to address my question? And I guess the other piece for advocating is the whole reason that I have my current job in being an education ombuds is that when I moved to Washington and thank you, Zach, for giving us what JEMA is. It sounds like it would be, it reminds me of a Bob Marley song now, but certainly not one at a medical conference. So unless it was a fun after party. Sorry, that was an aside. My lovely ADHD takes us on money trips, coming back to school here, getting on the school bus. When I became a parent, well, I moved to Seattle 9 years ago, and I got called to do this adoption thing like 2 months later. I mean, literally a call. So then I came back. I was new to Seattle, had a kid that was 4 years old, who was not an English speaker, who had disabilities and trauma. And I'm like, I couldn't get them set up with special education or English learning services. And I am a lawyer. I taught about special education. I'm married to a computer geek. Like, if anybody can navigate rules and systems and have people listen to them, wouldn't it be us? And so that really drew me into the world of education advocacy, because I just thought, this really stinks for us, and it's got to be worse for a lot of other people. So that really shifted. It shifted my whole career. I'd worked on disability and employment before, was in academia and nonprofit, and suddenly, I was an intern at our office and then applied to be the director. So everything shifted because of that terrible experience, which didn't end now that I'm in this job. It continues, although maybe I have additional legitimacy for however long that lasts in whatever context. But, it also can be used against me. So that's really how I ended up here. So it's just, yeah, it's really rough. And once you see it, you really can't look away from that. And I want to be hopeful that, somehow we're more responsive to advocacy, or as Miriam said, that we want to build systems that have people who are doing family engagement and supports and treating you as a full human being that you are, and as your child's first teacher, and as being the expert rather than trying to fix you or fix your children along the way. But we're not there yet.
Yeah, no, I absolutely resonate with that. Just like with how disability is, really just medicalized with the medical model of disability, and how, like conditions like autism or, Down syndrome are treated as like very similar to like cancer or diabetes, and how it's seen as just a collection of symptoms to be removed for, the betterment of the person, no matter what the person, thinks about the whole condition. I think, yeah, just really resonated with that last part, and how I think it's at the core of like so much of what we're talking about today, along with the shame. So yeah, thank you. Miriam, what are you thinking on this?
Okay, so it's about advocacy. I'm trying to reread this question. Okay, so I have privilege too. I feel like I received like a really good education, and I come from like a middle class family, which is like gives you a feeling of empowerment in itself. And when you feel like empowered, you can you feel like more like you can advocate for yourself, or you like have a vocabulary. So when I speak English and I'm in America and people speak English, and I can like use words or whatever, like sometimes, to explain myself, or like present as though like whatever, that might make folks like listen to me maybe. So I think that was like an advantage, and just like not having any family or anybody to like do it for me, and having children made it so like, wow, like the whole like advocacy like on steroids, but the thing is that there's not a whole lot of transparency in situations. So I feel like I worked hard a lot of times and like not smart, especially dealing with the Seattle public school systems. Like, oh my God, I'm like so feeling like Carrie on like everything she's saying. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but I feel like I just want to affirm like Seattle public schools is like, man, I don't even know how to explain these guys. Sorry, kind of like bagging on them a little bit, but I mean, there's good people in there, but I have had a lot of like problems with them and like disciplining my kids and the impact that that's had on my children, you know, and advocating like using like the information and knowledge that I thought I had and realizing like that despite like having a vocabulary, despite being able to communicate in like whatever the language that everybody's speaking in, wasn't like making any difference because the systems that I'm trying to like operate in or advocate for myself or my children are set up, they're not set up like to be able again to like embrace nuance, I think. So it's great to like have a vocabulary. It's great to feel like empowered and have like knowledge of self to where you feel like you could go into a system and like tell people what it is that you want or need. But I think there's like what I've learned in doing this is like there's strategies. And even at this stage of the game, having raised 6 children and having the last one in the Seattle public school, I'm still learning that I don't have like, I don't know what the strategies are because like what I'm doing is still like, I feel like I'm using a lot of energy, but like the results aren't like, my energy isn't really showing up in like, I don't know how to describe it, but the energy and the outcomes are not connecting, you know? Like I would like to see them. And I understand at this point that there's systems at play, you know? So even if I'm putting in like a lot of energy, there's still systemic processes and policies that are going to impede whether like my advocacy like really has like good outcomes for my children. And I like found this out like with my kids in middle school, you know, like my children had gone to like a private school and then they transitioned into like a public middle school, and it really became the school to prison pipeline for my son. You know, like he just it was horrible. Like no matter what I did, you know, I thought like I had a lot of information, like, but the disciplinary processes, like I really see how that situation like became like the school to prison pipeline, despite like my advocacy, you know. Um, so and it literally did become the school. My son did end up going like into the juvenile system and then going into the system as an adult. But I think like along the way, we picked up community, you know, like I was like so blessed and fortunate to be like to become like part of this like anti-racism community that helped me to like really gain like a knowledge of myself and systems. And so my kids would come like with me to like the meetings, and you know, I mean it was like fun, we got food, like everybody's hanging out, whatever. And so I think like along the way that my children like picked up a sense that like they were part of a community, that they could use community, that there was community. Like you might be going through something, it's not necessarily going to mean like you're not going to experience like, you know, the impacts of like systems, but that there is community, you know? So like I think that that's something beautiful like in advocacy is when you pick up a network, you know, or you pick up some community along the way. I think that's like was a beautiful thing that happened with me, because like along the way, what I learned, like somebody told me like never go into a room alone. So like I think now like if things are happening, I try to remember like not to go into rooms alone. That alone, like you can become like a victim quite easily, but that there is a network. So sometimes like now when I have like a problem, I just call somebody, like, or call somebody to help me like deal with it, you know, like, okay. So yeah, and I think like the most powerful thing I could do though is to like help my children learn how to self-advocate, to feel like a sense of themselves, to where they're like, they know that they have power, you know, or that they can make a phone call and like we can get connected to like resources in the community or a community member that can support them, you know? Yeah.
Oh man, like all of your answers, there's so just so much profound and important stuff there. I was just sitting here reflecting on, just the sense of powerlessness that exists when, you put in all of this energy for, the best outcomes and not knowing what's actually going to happen. Seeing how the system, absolutely fails disabled people, especially disabled people of color. And, also, that there is a sense of hope that well, I guess there, in a way, is a sense of hope in that, like, we're not in this alone, that, like, this is happening to other people, even though it's not good that, the same oppression's happening to them, but at least, like, you can find, camaraderie, understanding, and realizing that, like, yeah, it is about those systems. It's, about things that are bigger than any of us in so many ways. And it takes that community to create change and find that support. So, oh yeah, so important. Santa, knowing you, I'm sure you have a lot to say on this, and I'm looking forward to hearing it.
While we wait for Santa, I like Carrie's comment a lot. Advocating within a system that works exactly as it is intended to is frustrating. I think that says a lot.
I was muted there. Yeah, it really does. It's just the idea that, like, the systems themselves are broken are in many cases not actually true. It is like the systems are working as intended. Someone decided to set the funding levels at this specific level, which leads to all of these, you know, all of these forms of oppression happening. And yeah, that's really impacted my advocacy once I realized that. And then, yeah, I've not heard of the phone a friend model. Carrie, do you want to type that in chat, what it is?
I
Or
was just
you
thinking
can
there's a
say,
game show that was Phone a Friend.
oh, you mean
And
like,
so I'm sorry, I'm dating myself, but I was just like, I always think about it that way, like phone a friend, right? Like in the game show, when you didn't know the answer to
yeah,
something, you would just like, you could call someone. I mean, you're not winning money in this process for sure. It's not as exciting, but sometimes you just need to check in with somebody to know. I know I have to call someone and say, am I overreacting? Am I underreacting? This is so bizarre to me that I don't even know. Maybe it's supposed to work this way, or someone's telling me that I'm wrong about something. So, like, can I just talk to you about it? And like you were saying, having strategies and community and not going in alone, it makes all the difference, because people will say, you're being unreasonable, or let me just explain. Let me send you a link to that regulation or our policy. And once you read it, you'll agree with me. And it's an endless, just chase your tail. So anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what Santa has to say.
yeah. And so Santa just typed in chat, I don't really receive services, only for DSPs. And for those of you in not in this field, it means direct support professionals. Those are people who provide like hands-on, direct services and supports to folks with disabilities. My partner and I have done everything for our son. The best advocates come from parents who are advocates, then let their kids become advocates. So really like resonating with Marian's answer there about preparing kids to be advocates for, in a way, the world they're going to find. And it, for me as a social worker, like I always feel guilty that we have to do that we can't, magically change these systems and make them better, and that we have to prepare the kids for the realities that they're going to find themselves in. But unfortunately, our experiences show us you know, what we can expect to happen and how it might impact the kids. So yeah, oh, such deep answers. So we have about 15 minutes left. Oh, and I should spotlight myself. We have 15 minutes left and 2 questions left. So if y'all want to combine the 2 answers as much as possible, that would be awesome. So the first question is, do you feel like the systems you have had to interact in have been set up with the realization that parents can have disabilities themselves, how does that impact service delivery? And the next question is, if you could wave a magic wand that would change all of those services and places that you and your family have interacted in, what would actually be different? What would you change? So Lahila, you're up first. Lahila, sorry.
No worries. Thank you. So my answer is gonna be no, especially, I mean, I'm speaking obviously to my own experience, to invisible disabilities. So no, they don't think that that is something they're aware of. And also that oftentimes I've experienced that the onus of all care outside that elite clinical moment falls on the parent, the immediate family and the parent. And it's up to us as parents to reach out into our community or extended family for that support. But again, that is so, sorry, I'm having trouble finding my words. It's so case specific to each individual wherever they are. And if I could wave a magic wand, it's more of a philosophical question. Would be, could there be a universal design approach? The way we think of architecture and spaces in terms of the way we provide services, and what would that look like? Could it be that there's an intake either phone call or email, depending on the preferred way of communication, or is it a one-on-one, an intake form, and where parents can check off or choose areas of challenge or preferred communication or learning styles for themselves. So, do you have challenges with executive function or ADD or ADHD or ASD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, physical limitations, mental health issues, where you're not just asking about the child, you're also asking about the parent and their ability to deliver support. Again, to think of the parent more than just the paycheck or the dropping off. And so I have a list of things that I would love for providers to think about. Obviously, ADA accessibility, which is required by law, and should forms be filled out at home? What about if you have a hard time with filling out forms? Can you have someone who can do it for you at the office if you need that help? Can you email or send or mail easy directions and maps? Tell me how to get there, include a map. Break down what to expect on the first visit. List of useful terms and basic theoretical or research ideas. Plan of action, so reminders, texts, emails, calls. Don't just give me the card with a reminder. The opportunity to discuss in more detail for people like me who want to get all the information. Awareness, again, that parents have different learning styles and processing speeds, and they might need a little bit of information at a time. How would they like to receive that information? Waiting spaces, they can be quiet. What about the fluorescent lights? Do you have headphones? Are there smells? I don't want to smell your, what is that sniffy doodle stuff that people put in?
Fragrances?
But you know what the things that they stick
Perfume?
in the walls, the perfume.
Yeah, the perfume.
No, thank
things,
you.
Yeah.
None of that, please. And most of all, empathy and kindness. And that's why I kind of think at the end of the day, it's kind of universal design to pick up that, I'm going to borrow what Miriam said, the nuances that happen in interpersonal communication when the other person on the other side, not only is it their expertise in tech, in their technical delivery of whatever skills they have, but also their ability to attune and listen. So that's my spiel.
So yeah, I mean, so much of it does just come down to that empathy and kindness and compassion and understanding and willingness to support, rather than just going through whatever bureaucratic processes that, have been set in place that ignore that nuance. So yeah, so great. Thank you. Carrie, what are you thinking?
So I would like to see different people implementing that list. I think that we need more disabled leaders and decision makers across settings. So not just in DD work or not just in services that we think are for people with disabilities or ADA accommodation jobs. A lot of those folks become gatekeepers too in order to keep their salary and insurance and other things, or they feel eaten alive and empty. I don't know that I can speak to that today, but I will tell you, I'm super burnt out over here. So I think we need different people in decision making. I think that when we talk about racial justice too, like who is there, who you're interacting with, is your teacher Black? Does your teacher have a disability? Does the principal? It changes what the day-to-day looks like, or it should at least, if we, don't cut people up as they're going through systems, because those attitudinal pieces are huge. I know that I started this before COVID, but it was more important to me. Like those medical intake forms where it says, like, children's, for example, or UW, do you have a belief that we should be aware of? Now, I don't have a particular faith belief that they need to be aware of, but I have written on those forms, I value my life as a disabled person and my child's life as a disabled person. And we don't have those conversations. And in fact, my other thing with this in my manifesto is so much about what non-disabled people know about disability, they learn from other non-disabled people who they would prefer to have the comfortable conversations with. A lot of parent advocacy really undermines disability justice movement and the experiences of disabled people and silences them. So I think there's an opportunity for people to check themselves the same way that white people, we should check ourselves in standing up with racial justice, because we all need to be in it. It's not to shy away from it, but who is leading this and who is the expert? So I think on all levels, we need different people that we see as experts. I want disabled people in the billing office when you can't pay your bill and you need payments. I want disabled people teaching my kid. And I know they're disabled teachers, but they can't come out and share that because we have hostile environments for them in which they feel like their jobs might be at risk if they share that they have depression or anxiety or dyslexia. And some of those experiences lead people to education or to be in systems in which they hope to improve them, like social work or medicine, but they don't necessarily feel like they fit in there. So that is my manifesto for today. Just change what things look like, and let's see if how things get done look different too.
Awesome, thank you. Well, I really love that preview of your manifesto and absolutely agree with it and think we need more of that manifesto everywhere. So thank you so much for your thoughts. All right, Miriam, what are you thinking over there?
I feel like the question is, do you feel that the systems you have to interact with have been set up with the realization that parents have disabilities, and how does that impact service delivery? I don't think our systems are really set up like a system is like a policy, like in a policy, I don't know, a policy is then like interpreted by like an individual in that system, like implementing it and interacting like with the human being that's like sitting in front of them. So I think like depending on the system, like sharing that you have a disability, like in certain systems, like for instance, like say like advocating for my son, like within the criminal justice system or at a school, if you say you have a disability, it's like, it just feels like right away, like there's going to be like a whole picture painted around the family, that this family is less than, that this family's like, whatever, marginalized. Like it doesn't feel like it's going to be like being recognized that you have a disability. It doesn't feel like it's going to be something that goes like, oh, okay, well, now that we know this, like, let's find the support within the system that works like for this family, like like where it's just like, oh, this is just another family, but they process like differently. So we have like this set of processes like that can help this family, because like our main goal is to make sure that this family like achieves a level of success that this family like defines for itself, or like within these systems, you know. So I feel like it, depending on the system, like I don't always want to like share that, you know, I have a disability, because it's gonna feel like it's immediately there's gonna be like some stigma on my family. Like, and I feel like things get grouped together. Like it's like your income is like grouped with your disability, and like your place in society. It's like it all like kind of groups together, and like, you know, makes you like, you know, it's like there could be like a stigma, you know, like somebody stops seeing you as like an individual and just sees like whatever you're saying is like this thing that is like a challenge, or something that is creating like a difference that needs to be supported in a different way. So like with schools, I'm like not really like, you know, I'm coming in not having like a lot of trust of like institutions because of some things that I've experienced with them. Um, so I'm not like really wanting to like share deeply personal things about myself, like with schools, like because it takes so much energy to do that. And like I've used all this energy and haven't gotten like good outcomes. So I'm not feeling like really wanting to share that, even though like it's a place where I might be needing more support. But like I do want to like acknowledge like some places like Odessa Brown, you know, I have like received care there that's been like culturally competent, you know, like where it's just been like being seen as a person. And I don't even feel like I have to say to somebody like this is what's happening, because they're like really focused on the family, you know. So that's been like my experience with them. Or like where I receive like healthcare, there's also like a social worker there. I've had like great interactions with her, you know what I mean? Like she's been able to be helpful in, you know, and still like, you know, still refer to like the challenges that I may be having, but still like, and support me and have like a great conversation. And I leave the conversation feeling like I am strong and I can like deal with whatever it is I need to deal with. So I think it like varies. Like I think the people, some one of the other persons on the panel talked about the people that you come across in institutions, right? Like, so I don't want to get too long, but I'm kind of, so I have experienced like this, like a peacekeeping circle process, which is like an indigenous process of like community sharing. You can have circles for anything. You can have a circle for birth. You could have a circle for death. You could have a circle for like a community problem or something. But, and so in circle, I was in the circle with people, like every person was like different, you know? And in going through that circle, like, and the way that a circle process happens, and people like sharing their stories, there begins to be like a commonality and like a network built of people like in agreement to recognizing like the sacredness of each individual life. And I think like if institutions could like train like the people in there, like people could be having circles, like, or some way, like some process that helps us to like reclaim our humanity, then they can like deliver like an experience or share an experience with a person coming into that institution that's like a humanizing experience, you know what I mean? Like, so it's, if the person's them, like I can't assume that just because you work in an institution like that you have like some set of skills, like, you know, where you can like really necessarily see me. I mean, it should be like I should be able to maybe expect that, but I think like we have to do like, we have to embrace some different ways of like interacting with each other. that are that prioritize like humanity, like prioritize humanizing interactions.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and that I think that really just gets at the core of everything we've been talking about here today, is that like all of these systems dehumanize us using, stereotypes, using categories of who's in and who's out, who gets the privilege and who doesn't, based on things like, skin color or, like if they have a disability or not. And yeah, that is, always, I've loved all of your answers. They're so important, so profound. And yeah, restoring humanity to people does sound like one of the most important things that needs to happen for systemic change. So I really appreciate that. So the last answer we have is Santa. And Santa wrote in chat, no, it's still a taboo that people with disabilities have and raise children. Yeah, and especially, I'm going to interject, especially parents with intellectual or developmental disabilities. Santa said, I have no help from any providers when I had my son. I feel that it's the same thing. Society believes that people don't I'm assuming people with disabilities don't have the needs or desires to get married, have sex, or have children. This is so far from the truth. I wrote a book on becoming a parent called Sitting at Eye Level, My Life as an Advocate, a professional, a woman, a mom, and a person with a significant disability. Absolutely a book I will want to read. So maybe it would be a great Christmas gift for folks. And I like the marketing there, very, very clever. Santa, did you have anything else you wanted to say before we close out the panel? No? Okay, awesome. Well, it is 3:34 and we are a little over the allotted panel time. So I just appreciate all of the panelists so much for, just like really enriching us with all of the wisdom and experience and knowledge. And like, it was just, as the moderator, a really profound experience. And I hope it's an experience that was shared by the audience as well. So thank you all so much for being here and sharing your stories. And we will do more webinars like this very soon, so keep an eye out. And so until then, yeah, thank you all so much for being here, and I hope everyone has a good holiday if you are going to have one, or just a good, rest of the month. So thank you all so much. Take it easy.
Well, thank you everybody. It was so nice to meet you.
Yeah, it was.
Everyone.
It was great
Bye.
meeting you all
It was
too.
great meeting you all and learning from you and hearing you. And you're all fill my bucket hearing you guys talk. I mean, it's hard stuff.
It is.
But
It's important conversations, though. All right. Well,
Yeah.
take it easy, everyone.